Well, we get to really coming down to the last turn here, Ezra-Nehemiah, which begins to introduce us to our second, sorry about that, our second row of histories, um, beginning with Ezra-Nehemiah and concluding with the last book in the Hebrew canon, which is 1st, 2nd Chronicles. Ezra-Nehemiah is typically read as one book. They are the same narrative, so there's one continuous story through it. It's a same time period. They appear to even be written by the same author, same phrasing, vocabulary, things of this nature. And within the history of Judaism, how later Jewish readers approach the books, they seem to approach them in the same exact way, that they're one volume. Ezra 7 through 10 and the first person portions of Nehemiah are thought to be written by Ezra and Nehemiah respectively. And it's thought that probably somebody else probably had a hand in writing Ezra 1 through 6 and then the gaps. Insofar as compiling the book itself, taking 1 through 6 and combining it with 7 through 10 and the rest of it and Nehemiah, there's a couple of different ideas. One is reflected in your textbook, which understands the task of being completed somewhere around 300 BC. That's about 150 years or so after the events themselves have taken place. However, David Noel Friedman, in fact, sees Ezra as actually calls him the chronicler, the guy who kind of compiles the entire canon, and so therefore would certainly be capable also of compiling these books, maybe closer to the time where Nehemiah is making his return towards rebuilding the wall. There are both Hebrew and Aramaic sections here. The Aramaic sections are simply translations from the Persian letters. The chronology that's reflected inside of the books are significant to us understanding the book itself, and maybe even the end product of how it was compiled or when it was compiled. It begins in 538 BC, Cyrus's decree to go back to Jerusalem. At 520, the work on the temple is renewed, and that's reflected in this history. The completion of the temple 4 years later, Ezra's return to Jerusalem in 458, and Nehemiah's journey towards Jerusalem in 445 BC. All seem to be unlike other books that we've had, a very nice and tight chronology echoed within the book. It's done during the particular times of the post-exilic prophets Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. The focus is on restoration and temple and Torah. Haggai, of course, makes it clear that the temple that they're talking about certainly isn't the eschatological temple that he's expecting. Zechariah believes that there is a restoration, a renewal to come, but this seems to be quite a poor concession toward that. Both of these guys use Zerubbabel and Joshua, the high priest, almost like a diarchy, sort of foreshadowing. If you look at pan-biblically, with the New Testament as the most natural inheritor of these traditions, then pan-biblically, Zerubbabel and Joshua present this kingly, priestly sort of diarchal foreshadowing of the coming restoration and another. And also, the prophecies necessarily seem to indicate that Ezra and Nehemiah's return simply isn't fitting into the paradigm that's provided for us by Isaiah and company. Malachi makes it very clear that, in fact, a lot of the problems that sent Israel into exile are still there. There's still massive disconnect between ethics and worship. There's still a genuine problem theologically with perceiving, God to be less than significant so much so that God at one point in Malachi, in response to Israel's offering up lame animals, says to them, "Offer this to your governor. Offer this there to them." And sorry about I'm not sure why this isn't going away. Offer this up to them. Offer your lame animals up to them. See if they'll take it. So there's the conveyancer from the prophet is the covenant hasn't been kept. The exile hasn't served as a sort of purging of Israel, so that now that they've come back, they're coming back in a pure kind of way, obedient, repentant, things of this nature. They seem to still be coming back with very, very similar problems, very, very similar unresolved issues, extraordinarily Canaanized perception of God, of religion, of systemic ethics, and things like that. They'll flesh itself out. And so this seems to be the overall situation in Ezra-Nehemiah. The contents of the book themselves, the book of Ezra is built on a couple of different migrations and couching the restoration or the rebuilding of the temple. Cyrus's decree opens up the book. Then there is the pressing of pulling both the temple treasures and the people out of Persia and moving towards Jerusalem. There's a restoration of the temple in chapters 3 through 6 that includes rebuilding. The opposition, the racial opposition that seemed to be there for the people that remained back in Jerusalem. God functions sovereignly here in similar ways, almost to Esther. There's a final completion and then a second migration where Ezra comes to the scene. One of the most significant ideas of Ezra, we talked about this a little bit before, his concentration on not so much the rebuilding of the the temple rather, but the rebuilding of the people. There is I think a strong connection here between the Zerubbabel's rebuilding of the temple and Ezra's rebuilding of the people into Torah fidelity. Temple and Torah once again provide some meaningful themes here. A big issue was intermarriage. This was, of course, the issue here is not racial sort of fidelity in the sense that you and I know it in modern ways. In the ancient world, race and religion are simply inseparable. In fact, this is still the way it is in a lot of different places. I was in Istanbul, probably. I think this was maybe the first time I went. And I was hanging out with a few Muslim guys and talking. There were students, and one of them just said to me, "We'll tell you a secret," which is not what you want to hear in the Middle East if you're the only American guy at the table. But he said, "We'll tell you a secret. We don't like Islam." Now I was like, "Well, what are you talking about?" I mean, they weren't good Muslims. I mean, they really weren't. I mean, a good Muslim, I think, would have chastised them multiple times that day, but I was shocked to hear that they didn't like it, and they just basically sworn off religion completely. And so I said, "Well, what about Christianity? Would you be interested in giving Christianity a look?" And because we'd been talking, they'd been asking me questions about the Trinity, about the deity of Jesus, historical doctrines, fundamental definitional markers of Christianity. And and so we'd had this great conversation. So I asked him, "So what about Christianity?" I mean, I thought maybe this was them saying, "Hey, we're kind of interested." And they immediately shot me down. Immediately said, "Oh, absolutely not." So, well, why? They said, "Well, we're Turks." they immediately connected were Turks, and so were Muslim. In the same kind of way, this is one of the reasons that most Middle Eastern people, lots of Middle Eastern people, although I think this is waning now, but or maybe for the last 20, 30 years, they really did believe that all Christians, all Americans were Christian, that race and religion were completely and utterly bound together. This was completely common throughout the ancient Near East. So the admonition in Ezra, as well as early on in the Torah, that you could not marry, for example, a Moabite or an Amalekite or an Ammonite or Edomite, was not so much that there was a problem with interracial marriage. In fact, there's quite a bit of it going on in Numbers, chapter 11. Miriam is chastised by God for denigrating remarks and thoughts about Moses' Ethiopian wife. Ruth is a Moabite. Every indication is Bathsheba is a Hittite, and she and her husband Uriah are clearly the more moral people in that story than David the Israelite. And so it's not so much that there's a race issue; it's a religion issue. And so religion is the issue here. And so the intermarriage command not to intermarry is not to bring in people to a covenant relationship who don't share covenant convictions with you. And this is the issue here in Ezra as well. You move on to Nehemiah. Again, reading this as one book. Then you've got Nehemiah coming in as a sort of the third wave of the return. He has this just overcome with sorrow in the opening lines of his book. And seeks permission to go back and begin rebuilding the wall and the gates. They're here, just like in Ezra. There's a catalog of people moving through. There's a sense of spiritual renewal here with Ezra and combined in particular. There's a renewal through the law. Reading of the law, celebration, confession, covenant renewal. This is a full-blown sort of Torah worship service that seems to appear here in this place. And this kind of thing is significant for just the thrust of the narrative itself. The narrative is focused on return. And loaded with eschatological sort of imagery. If you remember, and I think I said this, maybe I said this earlier, I don't know, but if you think of the acronym ZEN, when I was at Auburn, many of us who kind of perceived ourselves to be these sort of neo-intellectuals, which just very, very pretentious types like me. We read this book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It was kind of a Bible of sorts. And Zen, Z-E-N, is a great way though to think about the return. Zerubbabel rebuilds the temple, Ezra 1 through 6. Ezra rebuilds the people, Ezra 7 through 10, and Nehemiah rebuilds the wall. And so think of it in concentric circles. You've got the temple, the people, the wall, right? And this community then is defined by these elements: Torah, temple, and God as a refuge through conventional means by this wall. The reference itself also though is loaded with mistakes of moving into the land and this is simply the narrative itself, and not simply mistakes, but also racial issues that they had moving into the land. It also bears loads of images of restoration. The narratives in Ezra 1 through 3, you've got Zerubbabel, David's descendant, coming into the land to rebuild the temple. This is a reboot, if you will, of 2 Samuel 7 to some degree. And this is capped off with covenant renewal in Nehemiah and the last few chapters there. So this is a great start to these two books, and I'll take a small break and we'll come back in the next lecture and finish this up.